I know. From here, it doesn't look like this table needs a refinish, but it does. And actually, it's already been refinished once, but they didn't do such a good job. If you get in closer, you can see that the veneer has been sanded through in a few spots, like at the corners here. And there's a spot here where it's sanded through the walnut veneer and also the dovetail next to it, just a little bit at the bottom. And these dovetails are veneer, they're not real. They're just faux dovetails. And here there are some black stains on the walnut veneer, and there's also a sand through in that same spot. So I imagine that whoever refinished it tried to sand those black marks out and ended up going through the veneer. And on the legs, it looks like they weren't completely stripped. You can still see some areas where the old, darker finish is on there. And then there's this drip here of something. I'm not even sure what it is, maybe glue. And this isn't my table. This belongs to somebody else, so I'm refinishing this for the owner. And I did let them know that I'm probably not going to be able to get out the stains on this because the top has already been sanded too much. So basically the plan for me is to take off the newer finish and strip off the remnants of the old finish that are still on the legs. Try to touch up the veneer sand-throughs and then refinish the whole thing. I'm going to start stripping the top, and I'm going to use a chemical stripper. Not sure what type of finish was put on this, but hopefully it responds to the stripper. I really don't want to use any sanding to get the finish off since it's already been sanded too much. And even the scraper, I'd rather not use the scraper. The stripper that I'm using is QCS by Stripwell. I've been using it for a long time now, and it's really been working well for me, especially on the mid-century lacquer finishes that I typically work on. If you'd like to try it for yourself, I have a discount code in the video description that will get you 10% off your order at stripwell.com. I've got most of the finish stripped off, but as I run my fingers along it, I can feel there's still some spots here and there where maybe there's still a little finish or maybe even some glue. I think there might be some spots of glue on here. Some of these pieces down here were possibly re-glued. So anything I run across that's still on here, I'm just trying to get off with a utility knife blade. The finish is all stripped off the top. There are some black marks on the top here, and it looks like the previous owner tried to sand them out and sanded through the veneer here. So this top, the veneer on this top is very thin. It's probably like paper thin in a lot of spots. So I don't really want to do anything to this to try to get those out. I considered doing applying oxalic acid, which could get them out, but even that's water, and if I apply water to this, then it's going to raise the grain, then I'll have to sand it afterwards, and I don't want to do any sanding that I don't have to do on this since it's already so thin. So I think these spots are going to have to stay. They are very faint. I'm going to do some sanding on the legs now. These are all solid wood, there's no veneer. I'm just going to rough it up a little bit with some 180 grit sandpaper so that it will take the stain. If it's too smooth, the stain doesn't stick to it. So. This is the lower shelf, and I just removed it to make everything easier to work on. And this is the underside of it, and it's got some kind of, I don't know what this is, something that dripped over the edge. It's probably finish, excess finish that just dripped over and kind of collected down here. So I'm just going to try to scrape that off. And while we're down here, we can take a look at the serial number, and the last two digits, or actually I guess the first two digits, if you read it backwards, gives us the year of manufacture, and it's 59, so 1959. Time to apply the gel stain, and I'm going to start with the underside. And I taped off these sections here because I want to do the legs first, and then I'll take the tape off and do these parts. Gel stain can sometimes kind of get away from you if you're not careful. It can start to get tacky before you've had a chance to remove the excess. And with this kind of complicated thing, sometimes that can be an issue. So I'm just going to concentrate on the legs and then the rest of it. In case you've never used gel stain, this is what it looks like. And these are both oil-based. Compared to a regular liquid stain, so the gel stain is thicker. It's more like a gel. And I use gel stain a lot. And gel stain tends to sit on top of the wood more than get absorbed into it. Like this liquid stain would. This would be absorbed more. It wouldn't make as much of a film on top as this does. And I like using the gel stain, especially on projects like this, the Lane Acclaim table, where you have the lighter outer sections, the trim around the edges, and then you have the darker walnut in the middle. Gel stain, I feel, tends to blend those two together more than the liquid would. Because I don't like the stark contrast of the light against the dark. I prefer to have it a little bit more cohesive. So the gel stain seems to do a really good job with that. Either one will work, but I tend to use the gel stain a lot. This part looks a little bit lighter than the other two sides, so I'm just going to put a little bit more stain on there. I've just applied stain to the lower shelf, and it's looking quite a bit darker than the top. So I'm taking a paper towel with some mineral spirits on it and wiping off some of the stain to lighten it. And this is something you can do with oil-based gel stain. Before it dries, you can take some mineral spirits and wipe it off, or wipe some of it off if you want to try to lighten it. And it's just a good thing to know with gel stain. Stain is now dry, and I'm going to add a coat or two of clear shellac to seal that in. The shellac is dry, and I mixed up a little bit of paint to try and touch up some of the veneer sand-throughs on the top. And once these touch-ups dry, then I'll put some more shellac over it, and then I'll put the top coat on. I'm going to try and conceal this sand through a little bit with some gel stain. And I'll just brush some on and then wipe some of it off and brush some more on and just keep doing this until it looks a little better. I'm not expecting it to disappear completely, but if I can get it a little less obvious, that would be nice. And here's how it ended up compared to what I started with on the left. It's still there, obviously, but it's not quite as light and obvious as it was. I forgot to film the part where I apply the polyurethane top coat. So I'm just going to do a quick demo here to show how I do that. And basically I just use a rag that's folded up, dip it in the poly, and kind of wring it out a little bit, and wipe it on. And this is Minwax satin oil polyurethane. And you can buy a can of wiping polyurethane or wipe-on polyurethane. But I find that sometimes the can's so big that I don't get through it quick enough and it ends up congealing in the can and I waste a lot of it. So sometimes I'll just take some of this regular polyurethane and add mineral spirits to it to thin it. And I'm just taking a can of regular oil polyurethane, satin, and I have an empty can here that I've saved. And I'm just going to fill the can halfway with the poly and then fill it the rest of the way with mineral spirits. So it's half polyurethane and then half mineral spirits. And that thins it out nicely, and it works really well for me. It wipes on easily. There's no brush marks or anything like that. And I probably apply maybe 3 or 4 coats of this, which is a pretty thin coat. So obviously if you want more durability, then apply more coats. And for the final step, I just have to spray some black paint on the feet. And here it is, all finished. Thanks for watching.